Hi, this is Lauren Travers at the Q Studio Lab. And today I want to start by saying thank you so much to everyone who responded to questions and who gave us comments about how they build their children's autonomy, what questions they might have about it, especially in this time where our children really need to know they are capable human beings. In our last video in the series, we talked a lot about giving children choice and knowing how to do that to help them, scaffolding their learning, and giving them the least amount of help necessary to be successful. And then we talked about having varied experiences and giving them lots of different ways to learn that they're capable and develop different skills. Friendship, building friendships and growing friendships, and the relationship between friendships and experiences and how they can feed each other. One friend might introduce you to an experience, or you might make a friend through an experience. There are lots of ways that that can happen. Those four ingredients help to create actually the fifth ingredient. And the fifth is about helping children find meaning in their life, really getting into things that they are so lit up by. They're excited about being able to do them. And that gives them that sense of meaning. And what we know is that if children have a sense of meaning, they are happier. And when we have happier children, our whole household rings so differently because it's a happier place to be. So today, I'm going to share with you some of the experiences I've had in lots of varied places of working with children. I've worked with children in preschool classrooms and elementary classrooms, in grief groups, in art classes, in camps, and in working with kids for over 30 years. One of the things that has become so true is that I get a lot of questions about what do we do when a child pushes back on having a new experience. And we were talking about that last time, that this pushback is something that naturally occurs. And so, what do we do when it does happen? In my work with kids, I have discovered some very particular ways that can help introduce them to a new experience. So, I'm going to talk about the three parts of a new experience. One is how they're introduced to the idea. The second is how they actually enter that experience. And the third is how we talk to them about it afterward. So let's start at the beginning. One of the best ways to reduce pushback from an activity or for an activity is to pay attention to our timing. When are we introducing the idea to our children? There are two parts to this. One is you want to be careful what time of day you're doing this. You don't want to introduce a new idea to students right before bed. You don't want your children to be tired or hungry when we're introducing the idea to them. You want them to be fresh enough. And I know this means that you may need to find the exact particular moment, but really that will help you so much. So if you can introduce it to them when they're fresh, when it's just you and them, they're not with other people, you can really allow them to have their own experience. Now, how you introduce it to them is also important. Where are you in yourself? Are you in a place of waiting for them to say no? Or are you in a place where you can really just present it and not know what their reaction might be? That's really important because they look to us. They pay attention to our tone and to our body language way before they hear the words that we speak. So you want to pay attention to yourself, get yourself in a good place, and then introduce it to them as an opportunity, not in a sing-songy, guess what you get to do kind of false way. You want to be really real with them. And you want to be leaning into, we have an opportunity. You have something you get to try. And we're going to do this tomorrow, and it's going to be really fun. So you're leaning toward the opportunity, the positive. If you lean toward the negative and talk to them about all the things that might go wrong, but that you're going to manage it and it'll be okay, their attention actually goes to the negative. So you don't want to put the attention there. You want to keep your attention on the positive. The negative doesn't need anything, right? Because they need to know that you feel confident that they will succeed. That is our job in that moment. And the more we can do that as parents and the more we can do that as teachers, the better experience and the happier our kids will be. Okay, so we've chosen the right time of day. Also, we want to make sure we don't give them too much time in advance. One of the mistakes we make a lot is we give them too much time to ruminate about something that's new. And so, for younger students, students under the age of 9, you can actually just give them a day or two. They don't need a long time. Their sense of time is very different than adult sense of time. So, just giving them 1 or 2 days is a good enough lead time. When children are above the age of 9, you can give them a little more time, but you still don't want to say, oh, 6 months from now, we're going to try this other thing, because it gives them all of this time to come up with worries or to come up with anxiety about it. So just a couple weeks can be enough for kids who are older, so that they can get excited about it, anticipate it, but not start to worry about it. So we've given them the right time of day to talk to them. How much time? We've not given them too much. And then the third part is our attitude, where we are in ourselves, right? Making sure we're not voicing the expectation that they will say no to me. And then we come to the moment where we bring them to the actual class or activity or camp or experience they're having. This is when it's really important to know confidently they can do this. And you need to show this by walking with them to it, giving them hugs and kisses, telling them you know you can do this, and then turning and walking away. One of the hardest things for students to do is to sit between arriving and that in between period where you're not really arriving yet, and yet you are there when parents are staying. If you're not going to stay for the event, then you need to be able to go pretty quickly, because children transition much better into something new, even when they're a little scared, when we're showing them through our actions that we have confidence they can do this. And that's by giving them those hugs and kisses and saying goodbye. Now, the other thing about this is if you're going with them into the activity, then you have to show the confidence of saying, here we go, I'm right with you, and we're going to do this together. It doesn't mean you don't move slowly. It doesn't mean you're not honoring your child's kind of fear in that, but you're not allowing that fear to take it over. By staying still too long, sometimes that fear can grow instead of going down and diminishing. So we want to keep moving forward as much as we can to help them know that they can do this. Now, when they go into the events, one of the things that happens is, like for us, what we really focus on is giving children their own form. What that means is having a way to engage with where they're going. I have a couple deep dive examples for you. So, one, we had a 4-year-old boy who came into our program one day during summer, and he was excited about every activity we did, and then was excited to go outside. We were going to play in the water, and he put on his, bathing suit, and he walked outside, and he stood, and then he went, not getting in that water, not going to happen. And he stood over to the side and watched. And the teachers encouraged him and said, come on, you can do it. And he said, not happening. So for that first day, he just stood and watched. And we really want kids to just be able to stand there and watch. Sometimes observing is the best way in. Well, that afternoon and then the next day, the teachers watched and said, is there something that we could do that would encourage him to try? So they put the water toys in the water, some of the items that they knew he would be really excited about. And he kind of went over to check them out and touched them a little bit, but still didn't want to touch the water. And then one of his friends went over and said, come with me. And so he went with his friend over and touched the water toys and started to touch the water, but wasn't still sure. Well, lo and behold, a couple weeks later, after being given the space to explore and do it at his own pace and his own time, he was one of the ones who loved to dance in the water and play with all the toys that were there. He knew he could do it because it had been allowed to be on his timeline in his way. And in doing that, it meant that he really had this feeling of, I did it. And it wasn't tainted by an adult having pushed him too quickly to make that happen. The other story that I want to share with you is of a 10-year-old girl who came into camp, and she didn't know anyone, had come in on her own, and she loved to write, but she wasn't sure kind of what she wanted to do. And so one of the counselors said, well, where do you want to go? And she was attracted to the theater studio. So she went to the theater studio, but she still wasn't sure how to engage. And so the counselor said, well, how about we all write a play together? And the students all lit up and said, oh, yes, yes, including this little girl. And she loved the idea of writing a play and got into conversation with people right away about ideas, and would go home and would write scenes for the play and then bring it back, and everyone would try it on, try on their characters, try on the costumes that they were all making for their play. And just in a couple weeks, she had made a wonderful group of friends at camp and had also found a real magical connection to something she loved, which was writing. And she really found that happiness because she was given enough form to engage, and then released enough so that she could make it her own. And that's part of the job that we have, is giving them enough structure to engage with the activity, but not so much that it becomes teacher or adult driven. It really can become their own exploration, which is really important. A lot of people ask about how do we handle anxiety for kids when they're trying something new? And I think it's a wonderful question. The first part that we look at when we're helping kids cope with anxiety is try to get to know exactly what the concern is. Pinpoint where the fear is, or where the part that, sometimes their body talks to them before their mind does. So where does the heart start to beat faster? Is it in sharing an idea with a large group of people? Is it drawing something just right? Is it being perfect at doing a math problem? All of these can be in the way for a child and build anxiety. Is it they don't know if someone will like them, right? But the more detail we get from children about what's causing it, as much as they can know and as much as we can help, the better we're able to create very specific strategies that can help reduce that anxiety so they can engage in the activity. So, what do we do to do that? Well, part of it is giving them their own tools and techniques for coping. So sometimes I'll give little stones to students to hold in their pocket when they're walking into something that's new for the first time. They'll hold it and I'll say, you can put all your worries into this stone and you can stick it right in your pocket. So it's there if you need something, anytime you need it. Sometimes giving them a saying, something they can say over and over again, like, I will find something, good in this, or I'm going to try 3 times. It can be something small and simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. And it can help hold a child up as they're walking into a new experience. So sometimes those are things we use. We also help students really walk through an experience together. We talk about what are they going to do first, what's going to be in the middle, what's going to be at the end, so that they get a sense of sequence and they can hold the whole experience in their hands. So it doesn't feel like it's going to go on forever and ever and ever. And sometimes we set timers, visual timers for students to say, we're going to try this for 5 minutes and then let's see what happens. Again, giving them time for their exploration, giving them time to discover something new and not jumping to the conclusion that they're not going to like it. That's also really a critical part, because they're going to look to us to see what they're supposed to feel. So we talked about what happens right before, right? We bring them to a new experience, how we introduce it to them. We talked about the new experience itself. And now they come back outside to us and say, all right, how am I supposed to talk to you about this? They're checking us out as soon as they come out, no matter what age they are, to see whether or not we're approving, whether we're going to talk about the negatives or the positives. So my advice usually is to do this. When a child comes out from a new experience, to say something like, so what was your highlight? Very casually and relaxed. Or say, so, was there anything that was interesting for you today? Again, not loaded, but being able to say to them, you know what? There might be something you were interested in. And the third part of that is also to not say anything at all. Instead, say, hey, so good to see you. And let them be the ones who say to us, this was my experience, but not pushing it from our side. One of the things you want to try to avoid is saying something like, "So was it as bad as you thought it would be?" Whether it's in jest or whether it's real, you don't want to lean into the negative. They may have just found a spark to say this might be okay, and that might keep it from igniting into a fire of an interest. So we want to be aware in all of these moments when we're introducing them to something new that we play a role. What we say is important. How we interact with them is important. And we have to put a lot of attention on that because we'll get a lot less pushback if we're paying attention to how we're introducing it to them, how the program might be structured and how that works for our child, and then how we talk about it with them at the end of the day. All of those make a huge difference for students. It's so important to remember that learning is a process and that this act of learning how to do something new is also a piece of learning because the more activities they walk into where they haven't done it before and they try something out, the more they build the muscle in themselves of being able to enter into new experiences. And that is a piece of learning all by itself. So we want to make sure we give them enough of that so that they can develop something we're going to talk about in our next video, developing grit and that stick-to-itiveness that we want our children to have, as well as being willing to start something. We want to help them when they get to a harder part of the work they love to do or the activity they love to do, where they may go, nope, not for me, and walk away just because it got hard. And so what do we do then? How do we support them when it's not that they're afraid of it or they don't want to start it, but they're in the middle of it and they're finding it's hard to connect now because it's gotten difficult? So we're going to talk about that in our next video. What I would ask is for you to leave us a question. What are your questions about helping, if you really had your home life where you felt like your kids were happy and they had that determination and grit toward what they wish to do, what would be different? How would things be different if they had that happiness in them? And if you have that now, what do you do to help keep it going? Because all of us run into difficult moments. So how do we keep it going? Please let us know that. Leave it down below this video or email us or let us know in person. And we hope we get to see you next time. Take good care.